The 160-year-old maritime mystery that would draw international treasure hunters, ruthless salvage companies, and shadowy government operatives to a forgotten shipwreck off the coast of Nova Scotia. All uncovered by one determined single mother's desperate gamble to save her family from financial collapse and honor her grandfather's obsession with a legendary shipping dynasty. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The icy Atlantic winds cut through Olivia Winters' worn jacket as she stood at the edge of Blackrock Harbor, staring out at the churning gray waters where local fishermen claimed the wreckage of the Mercer Queen still lay hidden beneath the waves. At 41, with salt-streaked blonde hair whipping across her face, Olivia never imagined her life would come to this, fighting to claim salvage rights to a ferry that had sunk over a century ago. The rusted sign behind her read, "Winters Marine Salvage and Repair," a once thriving family business now teetering on the brink of bankruptcy. She had exactly 68 hours to come up with $112,000 in overdue loans and back taxes before the bank seized everything: the boatyard, the equipment, and most devastatingly, the century-old family home that housed not just her memories, but the extensive research her grandfather had dedicated his final years to collecting. "Mom, the Historical Society called again," said Emma, Olivia's 16-year-old daughter, approaching with a steaming mug of coffee. The girl's auburn hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, her eyes showing a maturity beyond her years. "They still want to know if they can access Grandpa Marcus's archives about the Mercer shipping line." Olivia took the coffee gratefully, wrapping her calloused hands around the warmth. "Thanks, honey. Did you tell them what I said before?" Emma nodded, the gesture mirroring her mother's determination. "That his research isn't available until we've completed our own investigation." Olivia had never planned to take over the family salvage business. With a master's degree in marine archaeology from the University of Maine, she had been building a promising academic career at the Atlantic Maritime Museum in Halifax when her life took an unexpected turn. Her ex-husband's sudden departure, followed by her father's fatal heart attack 3 years ago, had forced her to return to Blackrock Harbor to care for her daughter and ailing grandfather. Marcus Winters had been a legend in maritime salvage circles, a pioneer in deep water recovery who had built Winters Marine Salvage into one of the most respected operations on the eastern seaboard. But the business had been in decline for years, undermined by corporate competitors with deeper pockets and high-tech equipment that the family-owned company couldn't match. The harbor around her was a testament to this decline. What had once been a bustling operation with multiple recovery vessels and a team of skilled divers now consisted of a single aging salvage boat, the Marcus W., named after her grandfather, and a workshop filled with outdated equipment that couldn't compete with modern salvage technology. "Your grandfather would have sold this place years ago," said a familiar voice behind her. Olivia turned to see Daniel Fletcher, her father's former business partner and now the town's most successful real estate developer. His expensive wool coat and polished shoes looked out of place among the weathered docks and rusting equipment. Daniel had made the 3-hour drive from Portland, where his real estate empire now occupied a gleaming downtown office tower. He had started as a diver for Winters Marine Salvage before branching out into property development, riding the coastal Maine real estate boom to considerable wealth. The banks offer to forgive 30% of the remaining debt if you sign. "Over the property today is more than fair, Liv," he continued, his voice carrying the practiced smoothness of a man accustomed to closing deals. "This location has prime waterfront development potential." Olivia's jaw tightened. "This isn't just property, Daniel. It's my family's legacy. 3 generations of Winters have operated from this harbor." "A legacy that's drowning in debt," Daniel replied, not unkindly. He had known Olivia since childhood and had watched her grow from a curious girl who loved exploring tide pools to a respected marine archaeologist. He'd also witnessed her struggle since returning to Blackrock Harbor, trying to keep the family business afloat while raising her daughter alone. "Mom's got a plan," Emma interjected, her young voice firm with conviction. "The Mercer Queen salvage rights, Emma," Olivia cautioned, but Daniel had already raised an eyebrow. "The Mercer Queen? You can't be serious, Liv. That's just another of Marcus's wild theories. That wreck, if it even exists where he claimed, is in contested waters with complicated salvage rights. Every company from here to Florida has looked into it and walked away." Olivia crossed her arms against the cutting wind. Grandfather wasn't just theorizing. He had evidence, solid research about its location and what it might contain. Daniel's expression softened with concern. Marcus was a brilliant salvager in his day, but toward the end, he paused, choosing his words carefully. His obsession with the Mercer shipping line became something more than professional interest. You know that. The truth of his words stung. Marcus Winters had indeed spent his final years consumed by research into the Mercer Queen's sinking and the mysterious collapse of the once mighty Mercer shipping empire in the 1860s. What had begun as historical curiosity had evolved into something closer to obsession, with Marcus spending countless hours poring over old shipping records, newspaper articles, and maritime charts. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Grandfather believed the Mercer Queen wasn't just another shipwreck, Olivia said, leading Daniel toward the workshop where her grandfather had spent his final days. He thought it might hold the key to understanding what really happened to Jonathan Mercer and his shipping dynasty. The workshop was a large weathered building that had once served as the operational center for Winters marine salvage. Now it functioned primarily as storage for equipment they could no longer afford to maintain and, more importantly, as the repository for Marcus Winters' extensive research. "Look at this," Olivia said, unlocking the workshop door and leading Daniel into the space her grandfather had transformed into a makeshift research center. Every wall was covered with maritime charts, historical photographs, and newspaper clippings. Glass cases displayed salvaged artifacts from various wrecks the company had worked over the decades. But the central tables were dedicated entirely to the Mercer Queen and the shipping empire that had mysteriously collapsed in 1863. Daniel whistled low, taking in the extent of Marcus's collection. "I knew he was interested in the Mercers, but this is comprehensive," Olivia finished for him. Grandfather spent 15 years researching the Mercer shipping line and its founder, Jonathan Mercer. He traced shipping manifests, crew logs, insurance claims, even personal correspondence between Mercer and his captains. She moved to a large maritime chart mounted on the central wall, where Marcus had meticulously plotted what he believed to be the true final voyage of the Mercer Queen. The official records state that the Mercer Queen sank in a storm off Cape Sable in February 1863, taking Jonathan Mercer and several key company executives down with her. But Grandfather found inconsistencies in those reports. Daniel studied the chart with professional interest despite his skepticism. "What kind of inconsistencies?" "Weather records from February 1863 show no major storms in that region during the week the ship supposedly sank. And he found this." Olivia unlocked a drawer and removed a protected document sleeve containing what appeared to be a ship's log. "Page. This is from the HMS Vigilant, a British naval vessel that was patrolling those waters. It reports sighting the Mercer Queen 2 days after it supposedly sank, heading northeast along the Nova Scotia coast." Daniel examined the document carefully. Could be a misidentification. Ships get confused all the time, especially in reports from that era. Except Grandfather found 3 more independent sightings from different vessels, all reporting the same thing. The Mercer Queen was seen sailing under full power at least 2 days after its reported sinking. Emma had been quietly arranging her grandfather's research notes nearby. "Tell him about the insurance claim, Mom." Olivia nodded, pulling out another document. "This is where it gets really interesting." The Mercer Shipping Line filed an insurance claim for the loss of the vessel and its cargo, valued at nearly $1.8 million in 1863 currency. That would be well over $290 million today. The claim was initially approved, but then mysteriously withdrawn before payment was issued. Daniel's skepticism was beginning to crack in the face of such detailed evidence. What was it supposedly carrying that was worth so much? That's the question that consumed Grandfather. The official manifest listed it as machine parts and textile goods, but the insurance valuation suggests something far more valuable. Grandfather believed the Mercer Queen was carrying the consolidated assets of the entire Mercer shipping empire: gold, silver, negotiable securities, possibly even the company's secret financial records. She moved to another wall covered with newspaper clippings, documenting the sudden collapse of the Mercer shipping line following the loss of the vessel. Within 6 months of the Queen's disappearance, the entire Mercer empire collapsed. Ships were sold off, offices closed, and the family vanished from public life. One of the largest shipping companies in North America simply ceased to exist. And Marcus believed what? That it was deliberate? That Jonathan Mercer faked the sinking? Daniel asked, now genuinely intrigued despite himself. Grandfather's theory was that Jonathan Mercer discovered something that threatened not just his company, but possibly his life. The Mercer Line had secured several government contracts during the Civil War for transporting military supplies. Grandfather found evidence suggesting some of those contracts involved moving gold reserves for the Union government, operations that were kept off official records. Olivia opened her grandfather's final research journal, where his normally meticulous handwriting had grown increasingly urgent in the final entries. His last notes focus on what he called the confrontation, a meeting between Jonathan Mercer and several government officials just days before the Queen's final voyage. There's no record of what was discussed, but immediately afterward, Mercer began quietly liquidating company assets and transferring funds. Daniel ran a hand through his salt and pepper hair, visibly wrestling with the implications. So Marcus believed Jonathan Mercer staged the sinking to escape with his companies assets? That's a pretty extraordinary claim, Liv. It gets more extraordinary, Emma said, her young voice solemn as she handed her mother another folder. Olivia opened it to reveal a series of underwater photographs. These were taken by Grandfather during his last expedition 3 years ago. Just weeks before his stroke. He believed he'd located the Mercer Queen, not where the official records claimed it sank, but in a sheltered cove about 40 miles northeast, exactly where those sightings placed it. The photograph showed tantalizing glimpses of what appeared to be a large wooden hull partially buried in seafloor sediment. Even to Daniel's experienced eye, the silhouette was unmistakable, the distinctive lines of a mid-19th century sidewheel. Steamer, if that's really the Mercer Queen. Daniel began, his voice trailing off as he considered the implications. Then everything Grandfather believed might be true, Olivia finished. That Jonathan Mercer deliberately scuttled his flagship in a hidden location after transferring its valuable cargo to shore. That somewhere connected to that wreck is the lost fortune of the Mercer shipping empire. Daniel shook his head, professional. Caution reasserting itself. Even if that wreck is the Queen, and even if Marcus's theories about Mercer are correct, the legal hurdles would be enormous. That area is governed by international salvage law, and any recovery operation would require permits, archaeological oversight, historical preservation guarantees. I've already started the paperwork, Olivia countered. My background in marine archaeology gives us an advantage. I've filed for exclusive salvage rights based on Grandfather's discovery. The hearing is tomorrow morning. Tomorrow? Daniel looked stunned. That's cutting it close with the bank deadline. If the Salvage Commission grants our claim, I can use that as collateral for a loan extension. The potential historical and archaeological significance alone would justify it. Daniel studied Olivia's face, seeing the same determination that had characterized her grandfather. What aren't you telling me, Liv? There's more to this than just saving the family business, isn't there? Olivia hesitated, then nodded toward a door at the back of the workshop. There's something I need to show you. Something grandfather discovered just before his stroke. The small back room had once been Marcus Winters' private office. Now it served as a secure storage area for his most valuable research findings. Olivia unlocked the heavy door and led Daniel inside. The walls were lined with filing cabinets containing decades of salvage records, but it was the large safe-in the corner that drew their attention. Grandfather insisted on upgrading the security for this room just weeks before his stroke. Olivia explained as she worked the combination. At the time, I thought it was paranoia from his declining health. Now I'm not so sure. The safe opened with a solid click, revealing several protective document cases and a small wooden box. Olivia carefully removed one of the document cases and opened it on the desk. This is what convinced me grandfather wasn't just chasing fantasies, she said, revealing what appeared to be a handwritten letter on aged paper, carefully preserved in an archival sleeve. It's a letter from Jonathan Mercer to his wife, dated 3 days after the Mercer Queen supposedly sank with him aboard. Daniel leaned closer, his skepticism giving way to astonishment as he read the first lines. My dearest Elizabeth, if this letter reaches you, know that our plan has succeeded. The world believes me drowned with the Queen, which should provide the protection we need. Where did Marcus find this? Daniel asked, his voice barely above a whisper. In a private collection being auctioned after the death of a Mercer descendant. He authenticated it with 3 different historical document experts. Olivia carefully returned the letter to its protective case. But that's not the most compelling evidence. She opened the wooden box, revealing a heavy gold pocket watch. The cover was intricately engraved with the initials JM and the symbol of the Mercer shipping line, a crown above a cresting wave. Jonathan Mercer's personal timepiece, Olivia explained. Supposedly lost with him when the Queen went down. Grandfather found it while diving at the wreck site he discovered. It was in a small leather case wedged in what he believed was the captain's cabin. Daniel took the watch carefully, opening it to reveal the inscription inside. To Jonathan. May you always find your way home. Elizabeth, 1850. This is... Daniel struggled to find words. Proof that grandfather found the real Mercer Queen, Olivia finished for him. And evidence that Jonathan Mercer staged his own death. She took a deep breath before continuing. The watch is important for another reason. Look at the back of the case. Daniel turned the watch over, noticing for the first time that the ornate engraving on the back wasn't merely decorative. It contained what appeared to be a map, cleverly disguised within the artistic flourishes. Grandfather believed this was Jonathan Mercer's insurance policy, a map showing where he hid the company's assets after scuttling the Queen. He spent his final months trying to decode it. And did he? Daniel asked, captivated despite his initial skepticism. Olivia's expression grew somber. I think he was close. His last journal entries mention the vault repeatedly. He was convinced Jonathan Mercer constructed some kind of secure storage facility on one of the small islands off Nova Scotia. His final expedition was meant to confirm the location, but he suffered his stroke just days after returning. Emma appeared in the doorway, her young face serious. Mom, it's Mr. Harrington from the Salvage Commission on the phone. He says there's been a challenge to our claim. Olivia's stomach tightened. Who filed the challenge? Global Maritime Recovery. Emma replied, naming one of the largest commercial salvage operations in the world. They're claiming prior knowledge of the wreck site. Daniel's expression darkened. That's impossible unless... Unless someone leaked grandfather's research, Olivia finished, her mind racing. Daniel, I need your help. The salvage hearing is tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Your testimony about grandfather's discovery could make the difference. Daniel hesitated, clearly torn between his business interests and his loyalty to the Winters family. Liv, what you're proposing is a massive undertaking. Even with salvage rights, you'd need significant funding for a proper recovery operation. I've thought of that, Olivia replied, a plan forming as she spoke. With the salvage rights secured, I can approach the Atlantic Maritime Museum about a partnership. Their resources combined with our legal claim and my archaeological expertise could make it work. For a moment, the only sound was the distant crash of waves against the harbor breakwater. Daniel studied Olivia's face, seeing the determination that had driven 3 generations of the Winters family. Your grandfather would be proud, he said finally. He never gave up on finding the truth about the Mercer Queen, even when everyone told him he was chasing ghosts. I'm not just doing this for him, Olivia admitted, or even just to save the business. There's something about this mystery that feels unfinished, like the Mercer Queen has been waiting all these years for someone to uncover its secrets. As they prepared to leave the workshop, Olivia cast a final glance at the wall of research her grandfather had assembled, the charts, photographs, and historical documents representing years of dedicated investigation. Whatever tomorrow brought, she owed it to Marcus Winters to see his final quest through to its conclusion. The hearing's at 9 a.m., she reminded Daniel. I'll need everything you can remember about grandfather's discovery process. Daniel nodded, a new resolve in his expression. I'll be there, and Liv? Whatever happens with the salvage claim, don't sign anything with the bank yet. I might be able to help buy you some more time. As Daniel drove away, Olivia and Emma stood in the gathering dusk, watching the lights of fishing boats returning to Blackrock Harbor. The Marcus W rocked gently at its mooring, its equipment ready for a recovery operation that would either save their family legacy or mark its final chapter. Do you really think we can find it, Mom? Emma asked, her voice carrying both excitement and apprehension. The Mercer treasure? Olivia put an arm around her daughter's shoulders. Grandfather believed it was out there, waiting to be found. He dedicated his life to solving this mystery. The least we can do is try to finish what he started. As darkness settled over Blackrock Harbor, Olivia felt a strange mix of dread and anticipation. In less than 24 hours, she would either secure the exclusive rights to one of the most significant maritime discoveries of the century or lose everything her family had built over 3 generations. Either way, the next day would determine whether Marcus Winters' lifelong quest would finally reveal the truth behind the 160-year-old mystery of the Mercer Queen and the vast fortune that supposedly went down with her. A fortune that, if real, could transform not just the Winters family's future, but potentially rewrite a significant chapter in maritime history. Creating and narrating this story took a lot of time and effort. If you're enjoying it, please subscribe to our channel. It means the world to us. Now let's continue with Olivia's quest to uncover the truth about the Mercer Queen. Olivia spent the night reviewing her grandfather's research, searching for anything that might strengthen their case at the Salvage Commission hearing. Emma had finally fallen asleep on the workshop couch, surrounded by stacks of historical documents they'd been organizing. Looking at her daughter's peaceful face, Olivia felt a renewed determination. This wasn't just about saving a failing business. It was about securing Emma's future and honoring the Winters family legacy of maritime excellence. The morning dawned clear and cold, with sunlight glinting off the harbor waters. Olivia dressed carefully in her most professional outfit, a navy blue blazer over a simple blouse and slacks, hoping to project the authority of both a business owner and a credentialed marine archaeologist. Emma insisted on coming along, wearing what she called her junior salvage expert outfit. complete with a Winters marine salvage cap that had belonged to her great-grandfather. "We're going to win this, Mom," Emma said confidently as they drove toward the Portland Maritime Center where the Salvage Commission hearings were held. Great-grandpa Marcus discovered the Queen fair and square. Olivia fought to maintain her professional composure as she entered the Portland Maritime Center's hearing room, but her heart sank at the sight that greeted her. The Global Maritime Recovery Team had arrived in full force, 4 representatives in expensive suits, armed with sleek presentation materials and stacks of legal documents. Their lead counsel, Victoria Reynolds, was a legendary maritime attorney, known for ruthlessly securing salvage rights for corporate clients. "Stay strong," Daniel whispered, appearing beside Olivia. True to his word, he had arrived early, dressed in a tailored suit that reflected his success as a developer, but with his old Winters marine salvage pin discreetly attached to his lapel. A gesture of solidarity that brought unexpected tears to Olivia's eyes. "Global has filed a competing claim based on supposed prior discovery," Daniel explained quietly. "They're arguing that your grandfather's research relied on their preliminary findings from a 2018 survey expedition." "That's absurd," Olivia hissed. Grandfather had been researching the Mercer Queen for over a decade before that. The commission chairman, Harold Blackburn, called the hearing to order. A stern-faced former naval officer with decades of experience adjudicating salvage claims. He ran these proceedings with precision and impartiality. "We're here to determine exclusive salvage rights for the wreck identified as potentially the Mercer Queen, located in coordinate Sector 47B off the Nova Scotia coast," he announced. "We have competing claims from Winters Marine Salvage and Global Maritime Recovery. Ms. Reynolds, as the challenging party, you may present first." Victoria Reynolds approached the commission panel with practiced confidence. Global Maritime Recovery conducted a comprehensive sonar survey of that coastal region in 2018. "As part of our ongoing historical mapping project," she began, displaying sophisticated underwater imaging on the room's screens. "Our data clearly identified a sidewheel steamer in the approximate location where Winters is now claiming to have discovered the Mercer Queen." She presented documentation showing global survey work, emphasizing the company's technological advantages and extensive resources. "Our company possesses not only prior discovery rights, but also the technical capabilities and financial resources to properly salvage this historically significant vessel. Winters Marine Salvage, with all due respect, simply lacks the equipment and expertise for such a challenging recovery operation." Olivia felt her confidence wavering as Reynolds methodically made her case. Global Maritime was indeed better equipped, with state-of-the-art recovery vessels and a team of specialized salvage experts. How could her single, aging salvage boat and limited resources compete with that? When it was Olivia's turn to present, she took a deep breath and focused on what her grandfather had taught her. "Truth and passion beat corporate muscle every time, Livy." "Members of the commission," she began, her voice steadier than she felt, "Global Maritime's claim of prior discovery is demonstrably false. My grandfather, Marcus Winters, began researching the Mercer Queen's true location in 2005, 13 years before Global Survey." She presented Marcus's dated research journals, meticulously kept with entries stretching back nearly 2 decades. Furthermore, Global Survey merely identified a possible sidewheel steamer with no specific identification. My grandfather definitively identified this wreck as the Mercer Queen through multiple lines of evidence, including these. She presented her grandfather's underwater photographs, highlighting distinctive architectural features of the vessel that matched the Mercer Queen's known design. Then came her strongest evidence: photographs of the recovered gold pocket watch with Jonathan Mercer's initials. This artifact was personally recovered by Marcus Winters during a verification dive in 2020. It has been authenticated as belonging to Jonathan Mercer himself, the very man presumed to have gone down with the Mercer Queen in 1863. A murmur ran through the hearing room. The recovery of a personal item belonging to the ship's owner was compelling evidence that couldn't be easily dismissed. Daniel stepped forward to provide supporting testimony. I personally witnessed Marcus Winters' research process over many years. His identification of the Mercer Queen's location was based entirely on his own historical investigation, completely independent of any surveys conducted by Global Maritime or any other entity. Victoria Reynolds countered aggressively, questioning Daniel's credibility since he was no longer officially associated with Winters Marine Salvage. She highlighted Global's superior recovery capabilities and argued that proper historical preservation required their level of resources. This isn't just about who saw a shipwreck first, Reynolds insisted. It's about who can best recover and preserve this important piece of maritime history. Global Maritime has successfully salvaged over 30 historically significant vessels with minimal damage and maximum archaeological value preserved. As the technical arguments continued, Emma slipped Olivia a note. Tell them why this matters to us. Make it personal. Olivia hesitated only briefly before taking her daughter's advice. Chairman Blackburn, if I may speak to the heart of this matter rather than just the technical aspects. At Blackburn's nod, she continued more personally. The Mercer Queen isn't just another salvage project for my family. My grandfather devoted the final 15 years of his life to uncovering its secrets. He suffered a debilitating stroke while pursuing this discovery, and his final coherent words to me were about completing this mission. She showed the commission photographs of the workshop with its walls covered in Marcus's research. This represents the life's work of a man who contributed to maritime history and salvage operations for over 50 years. Winters Marine Salvage may not have Global's resources, but we have something they can never match: 3 generations of commitment to this specific historical mystery and the specialized knowledge that comes with that dedication. Emma stepped forward unexpectedly. My great-grandfather taught me that ships aren't just wood and metal. They're vessels of human stories waiting to be told. The Mercer Queen isn't just a salvage opportunity. It's my family's legacy. The commission members exchanged glances, clearly moved by the personal dimension, but still weighing the practical considerations of such a significant salvage operation. Chairman Blackburn cleared his throat. Given the complexity of these competing claims, the commission will recess for 1 hour to deliberate. During the tense wait that followed, Daniel pulled Olivia aside. Whatever happens with the commission, I've been making calls. Several private investors might be interested in backing a Winters recovery operation if you secure the rights. Can we get that approved by tomorrow morning? Olivia asked, hardly daring to hope. The paperwork was filed this afternoon, Harrington confirmed. I have contacts on the State Heritage Commission. Given the potential historical significance of Marcus's research and the artifacts already recovered, they've agreed to an emergency review session tonight. For the first time in months, Olivia allowed herself to believe that her grandfather's obsession might actually save the family business rather than sink it. The pieces were coming together with a synchronicity that seemed almost fated, as if the Mercer Queen had been waiting 160 years for this moment. That night, as Emma finally succumbed to exhaustion and fell asleep surrounded by historical documents, Olivia found herself alone in the workshop, standing before her grandfather's research wall. The old photograph of Marcus in his diving gear, taken during his prime salvage years, seemed to watch over the operation with approving eyes. "I wish you could see this, grandfather," she whispered. "Your crazy obsession might just save everything." Her fingers traced the faded chart where Marcus had marked the Mercer Queen's final resting place. Something about the precise way he had noted the coordinates triggered a memory, Marcus teaching her celestial navigation when she was just a girl, explaining how sailors had once found their way across featureless oceans by reading the stars. "The stars guide us to what's most precious," he had told her, "if we have the patience to follow their path." On sudden inspiration, Olivia examined Jonathan Mercer's pocket watch again, paying special attention to the small star-like marks incorporated into the decorative engraving on the back. When she overlaid the watch case with Marcus's chart of Raven's Point, the stars aligned perfectly with specific coastal features. "He left a map in plain sight," she breathed, understanding. Dawning, Mercer designed this watch as a guide to where he hid his company's assets. The discovery energized her. Tomorrow would bring the bank's decision on the heritage preservation order. Within days, they would begin the expedition to the Mercer Queen with the museum's backing and the Poseidon's Trident's advanced technology. And beyond that lay Raven's Point and whatever secret vault Jonathan Mercer had established there over a century and a half ago. Sleep was impossible now. Olivia spent the remaining hours of darkness refining their salvage plan, incorporating the new theory about Raven's Point. When dawn broke over Blackrock Harbor, painting the water in shades of gold and amber, she stood on the dock watching the fishing boats head out for their morning catch, just as they had for generations. The continuity gave her comfort, a reminder that some traditions endured despite changing times. Winters Marine Salvage had been part of this harbor's story for 3 generations, thanks to her grandfather's relentless curiosity and her daughter's fresh insights. It might continue for generations to come. The morning's first call came from Professor Harrington, his voice triumphant. The Heritage Commission approved the preservation order unanimously. The bank cannot proceed with foreclosure while the order is in effect. The second call, just minutes later, was from Daniel. Maine First Bank just delivered the lease agreement for the Poseidon's Trident. "We can begin refitting her for the expedition immediately." Emma joined her mother on the dock, bleary-eyed but excited. "Did I hear right? We actually pulled this off." Olivia put an arm around her daughter's shoulders. "We've won ourselves time and resources. Now comes the hard part, finding what Jonathan Mercer hid and proving your great-grandfather wasn't chasing shadows." As if in answer, the morning sun broke fully above the horizon, sending a path of golden light across the harbor waters, a shimmering road leading out toward the open Atlantic and the mysteries that lay beneath its surface. The Poseidon's Trident gleamed in the morning sunlight as Olivia stepped aboard what would be their home for the next several weeks. The vessel represented the pinnacle of modern salvage technology, equipped with advanced sonar systems, a remotely operated underwater vehicle, ROV decompression chambers for divers, and a specialized crane system for recovering large artifacts. Even with her professional background in marine archaeology, Olivia was impressed by the ship's capabilities. "She's beautiful," Emma whispered, running her hand along the polished steel railing of the main deck. Professor Harrington was already aboard, directing the installation of additional archaeological documentation equipment provided by the Atlantic Maritime Museum. A team of specialists, including 2 marine archaeologists, a historical preservation expert, and a maritime conservator, were setting up a temporary laboratory in one of the ship's larger compartments. "We've modified the ROV with high-definition cameras and precision sampling tools," Harrington explained as he showed Olivia around. "This will allow us to conduct a detailed survey of the wreck before any physical intervention. Preservation first, recovery second. That's the museum's mandate." Daniel had arranged for 3 experienced salvage divers to join the expedition, former employees of Winters Marine Salvage who had worked with Marcus years earlier. Their familiar faces brought Olivia comfort. These men had learned the trade from her grandfather and shared his respect for maritime history. "Captain Marcus would be proud to see the Winters flag flying over a vessel like this," said Roy Callahan, the oldest of the divers, as he inspected his equipment. At 62, Roy had been diving with Marcus since Olivia was a child. "Never thought I'd get a chance to help finish what he started." The expedition attracted attention throughout Blackrock Harbor. Local fishermen stopped by to offer advice about the notoriously treacherous currents near the Nova Scotia coast. The town's historical society provided additional research materials about the Mercer shipping line's operations in the region during the 1860s. Even the high school's robotics club came to watch the final preparations, fascinated by the technology that would soon explore the ocean floor. 3 days after securing the Poseidon's Trident, they were ready to depart. A small crowd gathered at the harbor to see them off, friends, neighbors, and curious onlookers drawn by the increasingly public story of the Winters family's quest to discover the truth about the Mercer Queen, standing at the ship's rail. As the mooring lines were cast off, Olivia felt a momentary pang of doubt. They were committing substantial resources, the museum's equipment, Daniel's business connections, the reputations of everyone involved, to a theory that had been dismissed by mainstream historians for generations. What if her grandfather had been wrong? What if the wreck wasn't the Mercer Queen after all? As if sensing her mother's uncertainty, Emma appeared at her side. Great-grandpa Marcus always said that doubt is just fear wearing an intellectual disguise. The evidence is solid, Mom. We're not chasing fantasies. Olivia smiled at her daughter's confidence, so reminiscent of her grandfather's unwavering belief in his research. When did you get so wise? I had good teachers, Emma replied simply. The journey to the wreck site would take approximately 14 hours. As the Poseidon's Trident navigated out of Blackrock Harbor and into the open Atlantic, Olivia gathered the entire expedition team in the ship's conference room for a comprehensive briefing. What we're pursuing isn't just a shipwreck, she began, displaying Marcus's research on the large screen. It's potentially one of the most significant maritime mysteries of the Civil War era, the true fate of the Mercer shipping empire and its enigmatic founder, Jonathan Mercer. She detailed the official historical record, how the Mercer Queen had reportedly sunk in a storm in February 1863, taking Jonathan Mercer and several company executives down with her, followed by the rapid collapse of the once mighty shipping empire. But my grandfather discovered discrepancies in this narrative, she continued, showing the weather records that indicated no significant storms in the region during that period, and the multiple independent sightings of the Mercer Queen days after its supposed sinking. Professor Harrington took over, explaining the historical context that made the mystery so compelling. The Mercer shipping line wasn't just any commercial enterprise. During the Civil War, it secured highly sensitive government contracts for transporting Union gold reserves and military supplies. Jonathan Mercer had unprecedented access to federal shipping operations and financial information. He displayed historical documents showing the unusual insurance claim filed for the Mercer Queen, valued at nearly $1.8 million in 1863, currency and its mysterious withdrawal before payment. If Marcus Winters' theory is correct, Harrington concluded, we're looking at a deliberately staged disappearance, potentially involving government assets worth over $290 million in today's values. Emma presented the most recently discovered evidence, the correlation between the engravings on Jonathan Mercer's pocket watch and the geographical features of Ravens Point Island. We believe the Mercer Queen was intentionally scuttled after its valuable cargo was transferred to a secure location on this island, she explained with remarkable poise for a 16-year-old. The watch wasn't just a timepiece. It was a disguised map leading to what my great-grandfather called the vault. The presentation generated intense discussion among the team members, with the museum experts raising important questions about archaeological protocols and preservation concerns. By the time they finished, night had fallen over the Atlantic, and the Poseidon's Trident was making steady progress toward the coordinates where Marcus Winters believed the Mercer Queen lay hidden. Olivia couldn't sleep. The gentle rhythm of the ship's engines and the occasional creak of the hull would normally have lulled her into slumber, but anticipation kept her wide awake. Shortly after midnight, she made her way to the observation deck, finding comfort in the vast canopy of stars overhead, the same stars that had guided sailors for centuries, including those aboard the Mercer Queen on its final voyage. "Your grandfather used to say that the ocean keeps its secrets better than any human ever could," came Roy's voice as the veteran diver joined her at the railing. "But he also believed that if you approach those secrets with respect and patience, sometimes the sea decides you're worthy of knowing the truth." "Do you think we're worthy, Roy?" Olivia asked softly. The old diver considered this for a moment. Marcus was. He spent his life honoring the stories beneath the waves. "You've got that same quality, Liv. The sea recognizes its own." Dawn broke clear and calm as they approached the coordinates Marcus had identified. The captain slowed the Poseidon's Trident to maneuvering speed while the sonar operators began scanning the seafloor. The wreck site lay in approximately 120 feet of water, deep enough to have protected it from casual discovery, but still within the range of technical diving operations. The first sonar images appeared on the monitors in the ship's operations center, drawing a collective breath from the assembled team. The distinctive outline of a sidewheel steamer emerged from the digital rendering, its hull largely intact despite more than a century and a half underwater. Preliminary dimensions matched the Mercer Queen specifications, reported the sonar technician, comparing the images with the historical records. Length approximately 225 feet, beam about 35 feet. The paddle wheels are still recognizable on both sides, though the starboard wheel appears partially collapsed. Professor Harrington studied the images with growing excitement. "The preservation level is remarkable. Look at the intact superstructure. That's unusual for wooden vessels of this era in these waters." "The location explains it," Olivia noted, referring to Marcus's research. "This cove is sheltered from the strongest currents and storm activity." Grandfather believed Mercer chose this location specifically because it would protect the vessel from breaking up over time. The ROV was prepared for its initial survey dive. The sophisticated underwater robot would capture high-definition video of the wreck, allowing them to assess its condition and identify key areas for more detailed investigation before any human divers entered the water. As the ROV descended through the water column, tension mounted in the operations center. The remote operator guided the device with precision, bringing its lights and cameras to bear on the Mercer Queen as it emerged from the gloom of the depths. The video feed showed a hauntingly well-preserved vessel. Marine growth covered much of the hull, but the ship's elegant lines remained clearly visible. The name Mercer Queen was still legible on the bow, confirming the vessel's identity beyond any doubt. "My God," whispered Professor Harrington. "It's really her." The ROV methodically documented the exterior of the wreck, revealing details that matched the Mercer Queen's known specifications: the distinctive paddle wheel configuration, the elegant curved prow, the remains of what had once been ornate wooden scrollwork adorning the bow and stern. But it was what the ROV revealed about the vessel's condition that most interested Olivia. "Look at the hull integrity," she noted. "There's no evidence of catastrophic damage that would indicate sinking in a storm." Indeed, the Mercer Queen appeared to have settled gently onto the seafloor, its hull largely intact aside from a section of the lower starboard side that showed signs of deliberate damage. "That looks like intentional scuttling," Roy observed. "I've seen it before in vessels that were deliberately sunk. Controlled flooding through a planned breach, allowing the ship to settle slowly rather than break apart." The ROV continued its survey, moving toward the ship's main deck and the remains of the Grand Salon that had once hosted the elite of East Coast society during the Mercer Line's heyday. Though marine growth and deterioration had taken their toll, the elegant proportions of the space were still evident, with ornate railings and decorative elements visible through the encrusting organisms. "Can we look at the captain's quarters?" Emma requested, referring to the deck plans they had studied. That's where Great-Grandpa found the pocket watch. The ROV operator navigated carefully to the area that would have contained the captain's cabin and the owner's suite, the private quarters where Jonathan Mercer would have stayed during voyages. The spaces were largely collapsed now, with sediment and marine growth obscuring many details. "Wait, go back," Olivia suddenly instructed, having noticed something unusual in the corner of the frame. The ROV returned to the collapsed section of the owner's suite, focusing on what appeared to be a small metal object partially buried in the sediment. "Can the ROV's manipulator arm retrieve that?" she asked. The operator nodded, carefully maneuvering the robot's mechanical arm to gently clear away the sediment around the object. As the silt dispersed in the current, a small brass key emerged, its ornate handle still clearly visible despite more than a century underwater. With painstaking precision, the ROV retrieved the key and placed it in its collection container. The first artifact from the Mercer Queen had been recovered, and anticipation surged through the team. What lock had this key been designed to open? What secrets might it unlock? The initial ROV survey continued for several hours, documenting every accessible part of the wreck. The video and sonar data would be used to create a detailed three-dimensional model of the Mercer Queen, providing the foundation for the archaeological investigation to follow. By late afternoon, the team had gathered enough information to begin planning the first dive operation. The most experienced divers, Roy Callahan and two museum specialists, would make a preliminary inspection of specific areas identified during the ROV survey. "Priority 1 is confirming whether the cargo holds are empty," Olivia instructed as the dive team prepared their equipment. If Grandfather's theory is correct, Jonathan Mercer would have transferred the valuable cargo before scuttling the vessel. While the divers prepared, the brass key recovered by the ROV was carefully cleaned and examined in the ship's makeshift conservation laboratory. Once free of marine concretion, the key's craftsmanship became apparent, an ornate design featuring the Mercer Shipping Line's crown and wave emblem on the handle. "This is consistent with high-security locks from the 1860s, the conservator noted. "Likely for a strongbox or safe rather than a standard door." Emma studied the key carefully, then compared it to the detailed engravings on Jonathan Mercer's pocket watch. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a small design element in the watch's decorative border. "The pattern matches the key's tooth configuration exactly." The correlation was unmistakable. The watch and key were connected, both part of whatever system Jonathan Mercer had designed to protect his secrets. The first dive team entered the water just before sunset, descending along the guideline to the Mercer Queen's resting place. Despite the gathering darkness above, visibility at the wreck site remained surprisingly good, with the ship's white oak timbers standing out against the darker seafloor. Olivia monitored their progress from the operations center, watching the video feed from the divers' helmet cameras. Each diver carried specialized archaeological documentation equipment, carefully avoiding any disturbance to the wreck while examining key areas of interest. Roy's experienced hand guided his camera across the deliberately breached section of the hull, confirming their theory of intentional scuttling. The museum specialists focused on the cargo holds, carefully navigating through the partially collapsed internal structures to reach the spaces where the Mercer Queen's valuable cargo would have been stored. Their findings, transmitted through underwater communication systems, confirmed Marcus Winters' theory. The main cargo holds were empty, with no sign of the valuable shipment that should have gone down with the vessel according to the official manifest. "There's something else," Roy reported, his voice slightly distorted through the underwater communication system. "The captain's safe is missing from its mounting. There are bolt marks on the bulkhead where it should have been attached, but the safe itself is gone." This discovery provided further evidence that the sinking had been planned. Valuable items had been systematically removed before the ship was scuttled. As the divers completed their survey and began their ascent, Olivia felt a profound sense of vindication for her grandfather. Everything they had discovered so far supported his theory that Jonathan Mercer had staged the sinking of his flagship as part of some larger plan. The retrieved key and the empty cargo holds pointed toward the next phase of their investigation, Ravens Point Island, where Marcus believed the vault containing the Mercer fortune might be located. After the dive team completed their decompression stops and returned to the Poseidon's Trident, a detailed debriefing session followed. The information gathered from both the rove survey and the human divers was integrated into their evolving understanding of the Mercer Queen's final voyage. The evidence is compelling, Professor Harrington concluded. This wasn't a tragic maritime disaster. It was a carefully orchestrated disappearance. The question now is why? What would drive Jonathan Mercer to abandon his shipping empire and fake his own death at the height of his success? Grandfather believed it was connected to Mercer's government contracts during the Civil War, Olivia explained, referring to Marcus's journals. He found references to something called Operation Eagle's Wing in fragmentary government records, apparently a classified financial operation that Mercer was involved with. The night was spent planning the next phase of their expedition, an exploration of Ravens Point Island, guided by the coded map embedded in Jonathan Mercer's pocket watch. The small, uninhabited island lay approximately 12 miles from the wreck site, a journey of less than an hour for the Poseidon's Trident. Dawn revealed Ravens Point on the horizon, a rocky outcropping rising dramatically from the Atlantic, its granite cliffs topped with wind-twisted pines that gave the island its distinctive silhouette. The island's name came from the unusual rock formation at its southern tip, which resembled a raven's head when viewed from certain angles. As they approached, Olivia studied the island through binoculars, comparing its contours to the engravings on Jonathan Mercer's watch. The correlation was unmistakable. The watch's decorative border precisely matched the island's coastline when oriented correctly. "Look at this," she said to Emma, who was making the same comparison with a magnified photograph of the watch. "The star markings on the watch align with specific features on the island." Emma nodded excitedly. "And the largest star corresponds to that cove on the eastern side." The Poseidon's Trident anchored offshore, and a smaller launch was prepared to take an exploration team to the island. Led by Olivia and including Emma, Professor Harrington, and two of the museum's archaeological specialists, the team carried ground-penetrating radar equipment, metal detectors, and traditional archaeological tools. As they approached the eastern cove indicated on the watch's hidden map, the team was struck by a peculiar feature, what appeared to be a small, partially collapsed stone structure built into the base of the cliff face, almost invisible from the water unless one knew exactly where to look. "That doesn't look natural," Professor Harrington observed as they maneuvered the launch closer. Upon landing in the rocky cove, the structure became more apparent, the remains of a small stone building, its entrance now partially blocked by fallen rocks and decades of accumulated debris. Above the doorway, barely visible beneath layers of lichen, was a carved emblem that matched the crown and wave symbol of the Mercer shipping line. "This is it," Olivia breathed, a surge of excitement rising within her. "This has to be what Grandfather called the vault." The team approached carefully, aware of the structure's apparent instability. Years of Atlantic storms had taken their toll on the exterior, but the fundamental construction appeared remarkably solid, built from tightly fitted granite blocks similar to those used in coastal fortifications of the era. While the archaeologists assessed the structural integrity of the entrance, Emma made an interesting discovery several yards away, a series of carved markers in the cliff face, partially obscured by moss and lichen. When cleaned, they revealed a sequence of symbols that matched elements from Jonathan Mercer's pocket watch. "It's a validation system," she realized. The watch wasn't just a map to find this place. It contained a key to understanding these markers. Working together, Olivia and Emma deciphered the sequence based on the watch's engravings, identifying what appeared to be directional indicators and measurement references. Following these clues led them to a specific section of the stone building's wall, a block that looked identical to the others, but produced a distinctly different sound when tapped. "There's something behind this," Olivia said, carefully examining the edges of the stone block. Almost imperceptible in the weathered surface was a small keyhole, its design unusual but distinctly matching the brass key recovered from the Mercer Queen. The team documented everything meticulously before proceeding further, photographing the structure, the carved markers, and the hidden keyhole from multiple angles. Professor Harrington supervised the archaeological protocols, ensuring that their exploration would preserve the historical integrity of whatever they might discover. With everything properly documented, the moment of truth arrived. Olivia carefully inserted the brass key into the hidden lock, feeling resistance from mechanisms that had remained dormant for over a century and a half. With gentle but firm pressure, she turned the key. A series of clicks echoed from within the wall, followed by the sound of long dormant mechanical components shifting into motion. The stone block receded slightly, then slid sideways to reveal a dark passage leading deeper into the cliff face. Jonathan Mercer built a secret vault into the bedrock of the island, Professor Harrington whispered, awestruck by the engineering feat this represented. In the 1860s, without modern construction equipment, the team proceeded with caution, using modern LED lights to illuminate the passage. The tunnel extended approximately 30 feet into the cliff, its walls lined with the same precisely fitted granite blocks as the exterior structure. At its end stood a massive iron door, its surface adorned with the now familiar Mercer shipping line emblem. This door featured a more complex locking mechanism, a combination dial surrounded by numbered letters that likely formed some kind of code. Emma studied it intently, then turned to her mother with a flash of insight. "The watch inscription," she said. "Inside the cover, may you always find your way home." What if home is the combination? Olivia examined the lock more carefully. The dial letters could indeed be rotated to spell words. With careful deliberation, she aligned them to spell home and heard another series of mechanical clicks from within the massive door, but the door remained sealed. Something was missing from the combination. "It can't be that simple," Professor Harrington mused. "There would be additional security elements." Emma had been studying Jonathan Mercer's watch again, running her fingers over the inscription inside the cover. "Wait, look at the punctuation in the inscription. There's a period after each word except home. What if those are indicators for the combination sequence?" Following this theory, Olivia rotated the dial to spell out M-Y-O-U-L-L-Y-S-F and Y-O-U-W home, stopping at each letter that followed a period in the watch inscription. The mechanism responded with a different sound, a kinda deeper, more substantial movement of internal components. Slowly, with the protest of long unused hinges, the iron door began to swing outward. Beyond lay a chamber carved directly into the bedrock of the island, a vault approximately 20 feet square, its contents preserved in the cool, dry environment created by Jonathan Mercer's remarkable engineering. Olivia's light revealed what appeared to be stacks of wooden crates, metal strongboxes, and document cases, all bearing the Mercer shipping line emblem. The team stood in stunned silence, gazing upon a treasure chamber that had remained sealed and undisturbed since the 1860s, the secret vault of one of America's most enigmatic business figures, hidden from the world for over 160 years. "We found it," Emma whispered, reaching for her mother's hand. Great-Grandpa Marcus was right all along. As they prepared to document this extraordinary discovery, Olivia felt a profound connection to her grandfather, the culmination of his lifelong quest to uncover the truth behind the Mercer Queen mystery. Whatever secrets this vault contained would soon shed light on one of maritime history's most enduring puzzles and potentially transform the Winters family legacy forever. The vault's air, undisturbed for over a century and a half, carried the scent of aged wood, paper, and metal as it rushed past the exploration team. Professor Harrington immediately established strict environmental monitoring protocols. Sudden exposure to modern air and humidity could damage the perfectly preserved artifacts within. The team donned cotton gloves and set up specialized lighting that wouldn't generate excess heat or harmful radiation. "We document everything in place before touching a single item," Harrington instructed, his voice barely above a whisper, as if speaking too loudly might disturb the history surrounding them. "This may be the most perfectly preserved 19th century time capsule ever discovered." The vault's contents were arranged with meticulous organization, wooden crates labeled by date and content, document cases sorted chronologically, and a massive iron safe dominating the rear wall. Most striking was a large oak desk positioned in the center, where an open ledger lay beside an inkwell and pen, as if Jonathan Mercer had just stepped away moments ago rather than generations past. He was working in here, Emma realized, studying the desk arrangement. This wasn't just storage, it was a secret office. Olivia approached the desk cautiously, her archaeological training guiding her movements as she photographed everything from multiple angles before examining the open ledger. The handwriting matched known samples of Jonathan Mercer's distinctive script, flowing yet precise, the mark of a man accustomed to maintaining meticulous records. The final entry was dated April 17, 1863, more than 2 months after the Mercer Queen's reported sinking. It reads simply, "Final transfer complete, all assets secured. May God forgive what necessity has forced upon me." "This confirms it," Olivia said softly. "Jonathan Mercer survived the supposed sinking. He was here, working in this vault, months after his reported death." Professor Harrington was examining the document cases along the eastern wall. "These appear to be corporate records, the Mercer shipping line, logbooks, financial statements, cargo manifests, personnel files. An entire company archive, preserved perfectly." One of the museum archaeologists had begun cataloging the wooden crates. Based on the labels, these contain physical assets. This section is marked Massachusetts Exchange Notes and New York bearer bonds. Over here we have crates labeled Gold Reserve and Silver Holdings. The implications were staggering. Not just the physical wealth potentially contained in those crates, but the historical significance of discovering the intact records of a major Civil War-era shipping company, preserved exactly as its owner had left them. Emma had discovered something else, a leather-bound journal hidden in a desk drawer, different from the business ledger. "I think this is Jonathan Mercer's personal diary," she said, carefully opening the fragile volume. The diary's first entry was dated January 3, 1863, approximately 1 month before the Mercer Queen's reported sinking. It detailed Mercer's growing concerns about certain government contracts his shipping line had been fulfilling, particularly those related to what he cryptically referred to as special financial transports for the Treasury Department. "Listen to this," Emma read, carefully turning the delicate pages. "Today I received troubling information from Congressman W. regarding the true nature of our government shipments. What I believed were standard Treasury transfers appear to be something far more concerning. If my suspicions are correct, the Mercer line has unwittingly become party to a massive financial deception that could destroy the Union's economic stability." Subsequent entries documented Mercer's growing alarm as he uncovered what appeared to be a conspiracy involving high-ranking Treasury officials, certain congressional leaders, and private banking interests. According to his writings, these individuals were systematically diverting Union gold reserves during the height of the Civil War, potentially undermining the federal government's ability to finance the war effort. January 15th, 1863, Emma continued reading. My worst fears confirmed today. The documentation provided by Mr. L at Treasury proves beyond doubt that significant portions of government gold shipments entrusted to our vessels have been systematically diverted. Manifests have been falsified, weights manipulated, and substitute materials used to conceal the thefts. My own company's reputation has been used as cover for this treachery. Professor Harrington was astounded. If this is accurate, we're looking at evidence of one of the largest financial conspiracies in American history, one that has remained completely hidden for over 160 years. Olivia had moved to examine the massive safe at the rear of the vault. Unlike the wooden crates and document cases, this iron behemoth bore no external markings except for a sophisticated combination lock mechanism. I believe Jonathan Mercer faced an impossible choice, she theorized, piecing together the narrative from the evidence surrounding them. He discovered this conspiracy but realized that exposing it during the height of the Civil War could devastate Union finances and potentially change the course of the conflict. Emma nodded, finding confirmation in the diary's later entries. February 2nd, 1863, she read. The decision is made. I cannot in good conscience allow this corruption to continue, nor can I risk destroying the Union's financial stability by exposing it publicly during this critical time of war. There is but one path forward. I must remove myself and all evidence from the equation temporarily, preserving the truth until it can be revealed without endangering the nation. This entry was dated just 5 days before the Mercer Queen's reported sinking, lending credence to their theory that Mercer had staged his own death and the loss of his flagship as part of a calculated plan. The team continued their careful documentation, photographing each artifact and creating detailed digital maps of the vault's contents. What had begun as a quest to save a family salvage business had evolved into the discovery of a historical treasure trove of national significance. The academic and historical value of these documents is incalculable, Professor Harrington declared, his voice filled with scholarly excitement. This will reshape our understanding of Civil War era finance and maritime commerce. While the historical significance was clear, the potential monetary value remained to be determined. One of the museum conservators had carefully opened a crate labeled Gold Reserve Series C to find rows of pristine gold coins, double eagles, $20 gold pieces, still arranged in their original Treasury Department packaging, their 1862 mint dates clearly visible. The numismatic value alone would be extraordinary, the conservator noted. Civil War-era gold coins in uncirculated condition are exceptionally rare. Each of these would command tens of thousands of dollars on today's collector market. And there were dozens of similar crates. As their initial survey neared completion, Olivia turned her attention to the massive safe that dominated the rear wall of the vault. Unlike the other containers, this one remained sealed, its combination lock representing the final mystery of Jonathan Mercer's secret chamber. The diary might contain clues to the combination, Emma suggested, carefully reviewing the later entries. She found a passage that seemed promising, a cryptic note in the final pages, all primary evidence secured in iron heart. Access sequence remains as always. Elizabeth's promise, our beginning, and our hope for restoration. Elizabeth was his wife, Olivia recalled from their research. The watch inscription was from her, "May you always find your way home," and the watch was engraved in 1850, Emma added. Perhaps that's their beginning, a wedding date, or when the company was founded. The Mercer shipping line was incorporated in April 1850. Professor Harrington confirmed, consulting his historical notes. April 18, 1850, to be precise. The hope for restoration remained unclear until Emma made another connection from the diary entries. He mentioned several times his plan to restore justice when the war concludes, specifically noting that he calculated this would require approximately 7 years, based on military projections at the time. With these insights, Olivia approached the safe's combination dial. Following the logic of Jonathan Mercer's cryptic note, she carefully entered the sequence. First, the numeric values corresponding to the letters in home, 815135. Then, the date April 1850. And finally the number 7. The mechanism resisted briefly, then yielded with a series of satisfying clicks. The massive door swung open slowly, revealing the iron heart that contained Jonathan Mercer's most closely guarded secrets. Inside were not gold or silver, but documents, hundreds of pages of evidence meticulously organized and annotated in Mercer's hand. Bank transfer records, falsified shipping manifests, correspondence between conspirators, and most damning of all, a list of names, high-ranking government officials, prominent bankers, and business leaders who had participated in the massive financial fraud. He wasn't just hiding wealth, Olivia realized. He was preserving evidence of the conspiracy until it could be safely revealed without damaging the Union cause. A sealed letter lay atop the documents, addressed simply, to be delivered to the President of the United States upon conclusion of hostilities. The letter had never been delivered, as Jonathan Mercer apparently never emerged from his self-imposed exile to reveal what he had discovered. History took a different turn than he anticipated, Professor Harrington theorized. The assassination of Lincoln, the challenges of Reconstruction. The political landscape changed dramatically after 1865. Perhaps Mercer felt the time was never right to come forward, or perhaps something prevented him from doing so. The final mystery was answered when Emma discovered a hidden compartment in the desk, containing several personal items, including a small daguerreotype photograph of an elderly man and woman standing before a modest home in what appeared to be rural Canada. On the back was written, Jonathan and Elizabeth Mercer, Newfoundland, 1885. They started a new life, Emma said softly. They never came back to reclaim the fortune or expose the conspiracy. The magnitude of their discovery was overwhelming, not just the physical wealth contained in the crates of gold, silver, and financial instruments, but the historical bombshell of uncovering a major Civil War era conspiracy that had remained hidden for more than a century and a half. As the team carefully secured the vault for proper archaeological processing, Olivia stepped outside to contact the Poseidon's Trident. The sun was setting over the Atlantic, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples that reflected off the water's surface. In that moment of natural beauty, the weight of their discovery struck her fully. Her grandfather's obsession had been completely vindicated. Marcus was right, she whispered to the wind. About everything. When they returned to the Poseidon's Trident that evening, the mood was one of stunned excitement, mixed with the sobering responsibility of handling such a significant historical find. Professor Harrington immediately arranged for additional security and specialized conservation equipment to be brought to the site. The legal and historical implications are enormous, he explained during an emergency conference call with the museum's board of directors. We're not just talking about salvage rights anymore. This discovery has national historical significance that transcends normal protocols. The following days saw a flurry of activity as news of the discovery spread through academic and governmental circles. Representatives from the National Archives, the Smithsonian Institution, and the Treasury Department's Historical Division arrived to assess the find. Maritime law experts began untangling the complex legal questions surrounding ownership of the recovered materials. Through it all, Olivia insisted on one non-negotiable condition. Her grandfather's role as the original discoverer must be properly acknowledged and celebrated. Marcus Winters had spent the final years of his life pursuing what others had dismissed as fantasy, and history would now record that he had been right all along. 2 weeks after the initial discovery, With preliminary inventory and documentation complete, Olivia found herself sitting in the office of the director of the Atlantic Maritime Museum, finalizing the agreement that would determine the future of the Mercer Queen artifacts and the Winters family legacy. The Treasury Department has officially recognized the historical significance of the Mercer documents, the director explained. They're particularly interested in the evidence of the financial conspiracy, which apparently continued in various forms well into the 20th century. According to their historians, the legal resolution was complex but ultimately favorable to all parties involved. The historical documents would be preserved in the National Archives and the Smithsonian, with the Atlantic Maritime Museum creating a dedicated exhibition about the Mercer Queen and Jonathan Mercer's extraordinary story. The physical assets, the gold, silver, and financial instruments, fell under complicated salvage and treasure trove laws. After extensive negotiation, a settlement was reached. 30% would go to Winters Marine Salvage as the discoverers, 25% to the Atlantic Maritime Museum for their crucial support, 15% to the Historical Preservation Trust, established to maintain the Ravens Point Vault as a historical site, and the remaining 30% to the federal government in recognition of the originally public nature of some of the assets. Even at the most conservative valuations, the Winters family's share would amount to approximately $87 million. This resolution honors both the historical significance of the discovery and the remarkable work of your grandfather, the director concluded. Marcus Winters will be recognized as the primary discoverer in all official documentation and museum exhibitions. As Olivia signed the final agreement, she felt a profound sense of completion. Not just the successful conclusion of their expedition, but the fulfillment of her grandfather's lifelong quest to uncover the truth behind the Mercer Queen mystery. 1 month later, Blackrock Harbor witnessed a celebration unlike any in its history. The Marcus Winters Maritime Research Center was officially opened in the renovated workshop where Marcus had spent countless hours pursuing his obsession with the Mercer Queen. The center would serve as both a museum dedicated to the discovery and an active research facility focused on maritime archaeology and historical preservation. The old Winters Marine Salvage Yard had been transformed as well, modernized with state-of-the-art equipment while preserving its historic character. Rather than simply salvaging shipwrecks, the company would now specialize in historical maritime research and preservation, combining Olivia's archaeological expertise with the practical salvage knowledge that had been the Winters family's tradition for generations. Emma stood proudly beside her mother at the ribbon-cutting ceremony, wearing the captain's cap that had belonged to her great-grandfather. At 16, she had already been accepted into a special maritime archaeology program at the University of Maine, the youngest student ever admitted, based on her contributions to the Mercer Queen discovery. Your great-grandfather would be so proud of you, Olivia told her daughter as they watched visitors explore the exhibition of artifacts recovered from the Mercer Queen and Ravens Point Vault. He would be proud of us, Emma corrected her. We finished what he started, together. Daniel approached them, having just completed a tour of the renovated facilities. Marcus always said there were stories beneath the waves waiting to be told, he remarked. I never imagined one of them would be quite this extraordinary. The centerpiece of the exhibition was a life-sized recreation of Jonathan Mercer's secret vault, complete with replicas of the desk, ledgers, and safe. Interactive displays allowed visitors to follow the same clues that had led the Winters expedition to their historic discovery. A special memorial wall honored Marcus Winters, featuring his photograph alongside his salvage equipment and research journals. Professor Harrington, now a regular collaborator with the Research Center, joined them as they admired the completed exhibition. The Smithsonian exhibition opens next month, he informed them. They've asked if Emma would participate in the educational program for young visitors, sharing her experience as the teenager who helped solve A 160-year-old maritime mystery. Emma beamed with pride at the recognition. Her role in deciphering Jonathan Mercer's clues had been highlighted in all the academic papers and media coverage of the discovery, inspiring a new generation of young women interested in maritime archaeology and historical research. As the celebration continued around them, Olivia found a quiet moment to visit the small memorial garden behind the research center, where a granite bench had been placed overlooking the harbor. Carved into the stone was one of her grandfather's favorite sayings: "The sea keeps its secrets, but rewards those patient enough to listen to its stories." She sat on the bench, watching the fishing boats return to harbor as they had for generations, their running lights twinkling in the gathering dusk. The Marcus W was among them, now refitted as a research vessel, but still bearing the name and spirit of the man who had built the Winters legacy. A gentle breeze carried the scent of salt and pine, the distinctive fragrance of the Maine coast that had been her grandfather's favorite. In that moment, Olivia felt his presence more strongly than she had since his passing. The doubt and financial pressure that had weighed on her for so long had been replaced by a sense of purpose and continuity. "We did it, grandfather," she whispered to the wind. "We found your queen." The Mercer Queen discovery had transformed not just the Winters family fortunes, but their place in history. What had begun as a desperate attempt to save a failing business had evolved into one of the most significant maritime historical finds of the century. Marcus Winters, once dismissed as an obsessive chasing shadows, would now be remembered as a visionary who had uncovered a forgotten chapter of American history. More importantly, his legacy would continue through the research center that bore his name, through Olivia's leadership of the reimagined family business, and through Emma's promising future in the field he had loved so deeply. As darkness settled over Blackrock Harbor, lights came on in the research center, illuminating the exhibitions and casting a warm glow across the water. Inside, visitors continued to marvel at the story of Jonathan Mercer and his extraordinary secret, preserved for over a century and a half until the right family, with the right combination of persistence, knowledge, and faith, came along to uncover it. The story of the struggling single mother who discovered a $290 million shipping empire secret hidden in a sunken ferry spread far beyond the maritime archaeological community. Major media outlets covered the discovery, documentaries were produced, and a book deal was already in the works. The Winters name, once associated with a failing local salvage operation, had become synonymous with one of history's great maritime mysteries. But for Olivia, the most meaningful outcome wasn't the financial security or the professional recognition. It was standing in her grandfather's workshop, now the entrance to a world-class maritime research facility, and seeing visitors captivated by his research, following the same clues and connections he had painstakingly assembled over years of dedicated investigation. "Your grandfather used to say that wealth comes and goes, but knowledge lasts forever," Daniel remarked, joining her as she watched a group of schoolchildren eagerly examining an interactive display about the Mercer Queen's final voyage. "I think he'd consider this the real treasure," seeing his work inspire a new generation of explorers and historians. Olivia nodded, watching as Emma led the children through an activity that simulated decoding the clues from Jonathan Mercer's pocket watch. Her daughter had discovered a passion and talent for education, sharing her excitement about maritime history with infectious enthusiasm. "The greatest treasures are the ones that keep giving," Olivia agreed. "This discovery will generate research and inspiration for decades to come." In the months following the discovery, Olivia had received numerous offers to sell the research center or to partner with larger institutions. She had declined them all, choosing instead to maintain the independent spirit that had characterized Winters Marine Salvage from its founding. The facility would remain firmly rooted in Blackrock Harbor, contributing to the local economy and preserving the community's maritime heritage. The final room of the exhibition was perhaps the most powerful, a recreation of the moment when Marcus Winters had first theorized the true fate of the Mercer Queen, complete with his handwritten notes and the original maps where he had marked the vessel's probable location. Visitors could listen to audio recordings of Marcus explaining his theories, preserved from interviews he had given years earlier when most experts had dismissed his ideas as fanciful. Sometimes the most important discoveries come from those willing to question established history, his voice explained through the exhibition speakers. The sea doesn't give up its secrets easily, but it rewards persistence and respect for the stories hidden beneath the waves. As Olivia listened to her grandfather's voice, still strong and passionate, despite having been recorded in his final years, she felt a profound sense of continuity and purpose. The Winters legacy would continue, evolving with each generation, but remaining true to the core values of respect for history and commitment to uncovering truth. Emma joined her mother, slipping her hand into Olivia's as they listened to Marcus's recorded wisdom together. "He was right about one more thing," the teenager said softly. "What's that?" Olivia asked. "He always told me that the greatest adventures aren't about finding treasure. They're about discovering our own capacity to persevere when others have given up." Emma smiled up at her mother. "That's the real Winters legacy, isn't it?" Olivia nodded, squeezing her daughter's hand. From a failing business on the verge of foreclosure to a world-renowned historical discovery that would inspire generations, their journey had indeed revealed the power of perseverance in the face of seemingly impossible odds. Outside the research center windows, the Atlantic stretched endlessly toward the horizon, its surface glittering with the last rays of sunset. Somewhere beneath those waves lay countless other mysteries waiting to be uncovered by those with the courage, knowledge, and determination to look beyond the surface, the qualities that had defined the Winters family for 3 generations, and would continue to guide them into the future. "Yes," Olivia affirmed, her voice filled with quiet pride. "That's our true legacy, and it's worth more than all the gold in Jonathan Mercer's vault." As night fell over Blackrock Harbor, the lights of the Marcus Winters Maritime Research Center shone like a beacon, guiding the way for vessels returning home and illuminating the endless possibilities that await those brave enough to seek out the extraordinary stories hidden in ordinary places, stories that, once discovered, can transform not just individual lives, but our collective understanding of the past that shapes us all. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.